Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Meet Menaca talk show to celebrating you. Today, we are going to speak about financial management with Rudran. Before we go into the show, I have an announcement to make. From the month of June, we would be starting at 2 o'clock UTC, which is the UK time, the London time, which would be 6:30 in the evening on Indian and Sri Lankan time. So please be aware, in 1 month's time, we would be changing our time to reflect the time change in the UK. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. During a turbulent time like this, in the past year, we have gone through difficulties, particularly the businesses and individually. The financial management has become important, and it is a skill we all need to learn. Managing finance can be a daunting task that can cause even the most economically savvy individual to become confused or short-sighted. So let's introduce today's speaker, Mr. Rudran. He came to the UK in the early 70s as a student, qualified as an accountant, and has a master's degree in finance, for which he received the top prize. Raj worked globally, based in London, Brussels, and Stockholm, as Global Vice President, International Director, European Director, CFO in finance, and also on strategic alliances, acquisitions, manufacturing footprint, and business development. At present, Raj provides finance, business, and growth advice for business and startups. Raj Rudran is also the president of Scott. It is a pleasure, honor, and we are really humbled to have him in the committee behind the scenes in the Meet Menaca talk show as well. A warm welcome to you, Raj.
Thank you very much, Menaca.
So without further ado, let's go and deep dive in to learn a bit more from the expert. I know you qualified as an accountant and went on to work in many organizations globally. So what was the most fulfilling aspect of your career, Raj?
Oh, you're asking very difficult questions to start with, is it? Like being in an interview.
Taking the liberty.
I think most interesting aspects of working for these global organizations, I work for four major multinationals, and they are all results focused. So not about doing things, they set targets and work towards it. And getting deals done or strategic alliances done or acquisition or restructuring a company, they want to get it done, and that's what they target on. So that's interesting. And also when you get used to working in organizations like that, when they have meetings, for example, and I have a bad habit of asking too many questions. So as soon as I go, I naturally would ask, why are we here? What's the purpose of this meeting? What would be the success? What would you call yourself that you have succeeded in this coming to the conclusion of this meeting? Then what actions are you going to take? So with that type of situation, you are totally results focused. You want to achieve that. And then also the problem solving. It's like we were like adrenaline junkies because we get up excited to go to work, to solve problems and come back. That was driving us, and we were not even thinking about the rest of our lives. It's focused on that. Then also it's interesting to see us initiating some activities, planning it, and getting it done. Those are things which drive us. At the same time, the colleagues, the people you work with are of the highest caliber. Doesn't matter which nationality or country they come from, they are of the high caliber. So it was a pleasure, and I enjoyed working.
Listening to you saying that you worked with a lot of high caliber people from worldwide, is it safe to say you like motivated people?
Yes. I mean, if you work with those motivated people, you get motivated, you learn from them, and you are pushed to achieve a lot more. And talking about pushing, I think we need to be careful because my my children's teachers have told me, you mustn't push the children too hard. So we have to balance it. But personally, I enjoy that environment. And also, it was also developing people. So the people who have worked for me are now in very good positions, vice presidents in USA and vice presidents in Australia and places like that. So if I visit them and see them doing very well, it's really satisfying. And I want to do the same thing in the charities I work for, the other people as well.
Sure.
So developing people is important.
Thank you so much, because I can definitely witness, tell that you definitely ask difficult questions and you definitely push people to do better. So I have witnessed it, so I can tell that, and it is helpful. Let's come back to finance. Finance is a daunting subject for many of us. What is your take on it as an expert?
Simple. I mean, all the guys work with computers, right? How many of you know about the software engineering that goes into it or the hardware engineering that goes into it? We don't know, right? So, but we are able to use that computer and achieve the results we want. Similarly, in healthcare, if you want to take care of the health, if you take the personal health, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not qualified in medicine or anything, but I am like yourselves. I'm able to take care of myself. I know I need to have nutritious food. I need to exercise. I shouldn't drink too much alcohol. And then I must also take rest, right? So, I mean, those are things. If there is a problem, I go to the experts. Finance is pretty much the same, right? The basic things everyone can do. You don't need to understand the technicalities and the details of certain things. At the time that you need it, you've got to get the right advice. Now, don't pick up the yellow pages or your Google or whatever and just select the person you have first come across. Go to the person who has been recommended by the others and make sure you get the right advice. Otherwise, it's it's random hit. So you shouldn't do that.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I think it is a good advice for all of us to follow. Going from there, as an expert, can you tell us what's the important thing about the managing finance? So what is the most important thing, or is there a hierarchy of important things that we have to look at?
So let's go back a bit. So if you want to manage finance, so you need to know your income, right? So what your income is. If you don't know, you're working in the dark. So you better have a good idea of that. Secondly, you got to work out your expenses. Start at the big ones. So for the average person, the mortgage is a very big one. Then there may be school fees and other things. So start from the top ones and work your way down. During that process, examine what is actually a necessity and what are the nice to have and the luxuries, right? When the time comes, you need to be able to examine the nice to have, whether you need it or not at that point in time. And, you make your own decision because you earn the money, you deserve to have a good life. You make the decision whether you need it at that point in time or not. So the bottom line is, the net of all that is your cash flow. And you should have positive cash flow. Right? If you don't have positive cash flow, you are in trouble. So the easier one to look at is to the expenses. So go back again and make sure those are defined or properly addressed. And then the other one is to focus on your income. And we will come back to the focus later, because what you focus on grows. It's like you driving around in a car in town, and you don't focus what color cars they are. Then if you think about, I'm going to focus on red cars, then you see the red cars everywhere. Likewise, if you want to think about income, growing your income, you would find opportunities to grow. Right? Take an example of a teacher that I know of, and initially she was getting, for her time that she spent 40 hours time, she was getting paid. That was the income. Then I don't know whether she needed the extra money or not. Then what she started doing was giving private lessons. Then she's such an entrepreneurial person. She wanted to grow. Then she started training on internet. She set up an internet system, and she didn't do the work herself. She got hold of teachers, and every time somebody earned X amount, she was getting a cut. She was making money. And she didn't stop at that. She went on to start writing the exercise books or some books for the children, which provided exercise to improve their English and maths and so on. And again, she didn't do everything herself. She got all of other people to do it, but and she got the income from them. So the focus, if you're focused on, you see opportunities. So that's it. Other thing to look at in your personal finance is debt. The conventional wisdom is that pay off all your debts, get out of that as soon as possible. Is that the right decision? You should think about it. If you're paying interest of 2% and getting a return of more than 7 or 8% average, what should you do? Should you not borrow? So it's a question of making a decision based on the facts you have. Right? So that's the pretty basic things everyone knows. Now, you asked about what's the key thing here, what's the most important factor here, is your mindset. And if you have the right mindset, then you would start making money. I think, Menaca, you probably have read this book by this chapter.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So he talked about 4 quotes. On the left-hand side, there's the employment, the guy who is an employee, and then there's the self-employed person. On the other side, we have the business person and the investor. They say the left-hand side is the poor man. On the other side, the businessman and investor, they are the rich people. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because in every quadrant, as long as your feeling, your point of financial freedom or financial success is satisfied, and you achieve that, you are successful. You should not, just because a person is employed in employment and not doing business, doesn't mean he's not successful, right? So it depends on the person's definition of success. Yeah. So the mindset is very important. But then, if you are an employee, you are only selling your time, right? So you are not going to become a multimillionaire. That's why they say poor man and rich man. But you've got to move to the other corner, the opposite side of the corner, which is investment. And how do you go about doing it? You've got to begin to save something. Right from the beginning, you start saving and begin to invest. I mean, that's the way of getting it. So, and people also be learning to get rewarded by the results. And if you go and work for 40 hours and come home without looking for any extra you want to provide, then you are not going to be rewarded for any extras. So you've got to be looking for the results. And one of the other thing is the technical ability and technical excellence is one thing. You are not going to become very rich if you don't have the right people skills. So the people skills are very important. Then every time you move from your secure employment to do either become a businessman or begin to invest, there is a risk. So you must understand the level of risk, and then you're happy with that. You've got to take that chance and go on, right? So there is fear, but in spite of the fear, you should act.
Sure. Thanks, Raj. Like, it's really important. Before we are going to go into the nitty-gritty of how we have to exactly manage the finance. But before that, interestingly, you said about mindset, and we have all heard, isn't it? Does money grow? Money doesn't grow on the tree, or something similar. So
Yes.
how much does that kind of mindset play a role in somebody's financial success?
That is the key. As we said before, your focus is important. If you're not focused on the red car, you're not going to see it, right? Like that, the teacher, if she's not focused on that income and she wanted to grow that, she wouldn't have looked at the opportunities of growing via internet or growing in getting the other people to work for her and so on. So the mindset, the focus is important. If you start with a failure attitude, right? If you start saying that money is difficult to get by, I don't know how to do the next thing, you're looking at the negative side. You're not looking at the positive side. There are opportunities. So I don't know whether I mentioned it before the event or not. I know of two young people. They came to me when they were about 26. At that time, one was a declared bankrupt. He couldn't even pay his bills. It was declared. The other guy had some issues. Let's not go into the type of issues. However, they wanted to make money. They were not, within quotes, employable. But they had the drive. Then they started selling on the electronic commerce. They were selling in USA. They're very clever, sharp. Where's the biggest market? USA, as opposed to UK or Europe, because Europe, there are so many other complexities. They identified Europe based in here. They bought the items from China, sent it directly to USA, and in 18 months' time, they had a business for $6.5 million. And so one of them retired early at the age of 28 or 29, and then started investing. Exactly what Kiyosaki did, this guy is doing it. And now the guy who is about my son's age is a friend of mine. He talks to me as an equal, as a friend of, there's a huge age gap, but we have similar interests, and it's nice to work with him.
Sure. We missed the opportunity to work with you so much early on. So we are all going to queue up, right, to come and ask advice now.
No. I learned a lot of these too late because initially I was also driven by working for someone, and I wasn't thinking about the others. But that's from my parents. You have to work hard, do this, get a qualification, work for people, and so that's the way I started too. So we all learn. Yeah.
I understand totally, because I think it's like the lack mindset, isn't it? Regardless how much you have.
It all depends on what you see and what you think. Also, I've heard we drive every day, we don't notice the car. But the moment you buy a car,
A BMW or Audi or a Ford, regardless.
a white one or a red one, as soon as you drive off from the car showroom, what do you see?
Lots of Audis, lots of BMWs, lots of Fords. It happens to all of us. And I think it is all about focus. So I totally agree with that. So going from there, is there a process you would recommend us to follow to manage our finances effectively? Because of course, we have heard some success stories, what people can do. Can you tell us some secrets, what we can do as well?
No. In terms of the mechanical process, you need to understand your income. You need to know what the expenses are, and your focus should be on saving and investing, right? So that is not the difficult part. Everyone knows. I mean, I didn't have to come here to talk about that, because if you ask your mom how to manage my finances, she would have said exactly that. Don't spend more than you earn, and make sure you leave something for future. Start investing. That's exactly what you are. That's the basic process. But what we didn't have, that would have been the general advice. What we didn't have is the focus to grow and move from the employment quadrant to the business or investment quadrants. Those, at least in my background, that the focus was not there.
Sure. So is there a formula we can follow when we do get the money in? So we know that how much is the expenditure, but how is it best to manage that finances, whatever we get?
The basic processes we talked about, right? Then what's important is discipline. Yeah. So the conventional wisdom is that when you, of your total say earning, 50% should go for your basic needs and essentials. And 30% should be allocated for your luxury and 20% for saving. That's the conventional wisdom. So that your savings, 20% would keep growing, getting compounded. And when you retire, you're financially independent. But I think there is that you ought to look at it slightly differently. My personal feeling is, even when you're in employment, not doing anything else, you've got to spend at least 10% improving yourself. You want to get the next qualification or develop your people skill, develop your negotiation skills. These are soft skills which are not taught in schools. Even when we did accountancy or so, these skills are not taught. These are taught. Right when we are negotiating businesses, we look back and think, oh, how do I do this? And some of us, or some of the people, were in a lucky positions where the corporation took that responsibility and put us through certain training courses. But not everyone has it. So I think everyone should be dedicating at least 10% to the overall earning to develop themselves. So I would turn it around and say, instead of that 50, 30, 20, put 70% to 70% on the essentials and luxury, and 10% on learning, and the rest of the 20%. However, as you do this, your income is going to be rising, right? Your 10% of investment on yourself is going to help you improve the income. So what are we going to do? Are we still going to stick to 20%? Then there's something wrong, because your necessities are outgrowing the savings and the needs. So, greater percentage should be invested. That should be the target. And many people would say, look, not everyone is that luxurious position of saving. It's not about saving 10% or 20%, 30%, or even 50%, right? Lots of people do that. People in very high earning positions do that. They save it. But it's a matter of habit. Even if you cannot save that 10% right from the beginning, start putting £100 away, or £50 away, or £10 away. Once you get into the habit, then you can move on. So that habit is important. So you want to get positive cash flow, and the positive cash flow should be used in the right place.
Sure. So thanks for telling that 70%, 20%, 10%. So we all know now we have to save, and we have to start from there, not the other way around. And so how would you recommend our audience to allocate their savings? Because even £10, £20, traditionally, our parents, we have only seen them go and deposit it in the bank most of the time. So how is the best way to save even the little they have?
Yes. So the first thing is, don't put all your savings in one basket, right? That's, everyone knows. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket. On the other side, don't put them in too many baskets, because you need to manage them. Are you able to pay attention to each one of those? No. So don't do that either. So try and get good investment advisors. There are firms which employ 40, 50 people analyzing businesses and investing in businesses. So there are people who are doing it. So don't try to do it yourself. You may have to pay 0.5% to 2%, up to 2% as commission, but they are doing a good job. And that doesn't mean you've got to jump in and pay 2% straight away. Negotiate the price, right? Keep negotiating, and you get the best deal. Select the right company. Look at the previous history. the past history is not a predictor of future performance. That's given. But at the same time, past history shows how well they have been doing it, what is their capabilities. If the market situation changes, that's going to have an impact on everyone. But here they have the good processes which would help them to stay on top. There are companies which are making over 20% per annum, even in the difficult time. In 2020, when everyone had difficulty, I know of a company who's an investment company which was growing at 20% per annum, which grew their assets by 20%. Right, so that's good. We talked about two things, and then there is a thing called investment pyramid. All your assets, we said we cannot put in one basket. How do you do it? So they have the thing called this investment pyramid. If you look at the pyramid, it has a broad base, and it's a solid structure, the pyramid. So because the base is very solid and spaced out. But in terms of investments, usually the higher the risk you take, the higher the return, right? But that's a very risky strategy. So what you should do, again, when none of these I'm saying is my own original thought process, right? These are things I have read, practiced, and applied. So the conventional wisdom is that you should have the low risk, but they are low return investments at the base of the pyramid. Right? So that may be 10 to 20%, depending on your risk appetite. That could be things like investment bonds, or in corporate bonds, or government bonds, or any other bank savings schemes. So that will have, that won't make you a rich person, but then that money is safe. The other side of the coin is that money is safe, but if you are getting an interest of 5% maybe, not today you won't get that. You will get 0.5% if you're lucky. And very soon you will be paying the bank to keep your money. That's going to happen as well. That might happen. There may be charges. In Switzerland, they have already been doing that. You pay them to keep your money. So so there's a small return on that. But if you think about the inflation, right? If that exceeds, what's happening to the value of money? You're going to be losing money. The real value of money, your purchasing power, is being lost. That's that. Today, what has been happening during the COVID time, because they are pumping in money into the system, which is they are printing cash. Right? The quantitative easing is a nice way of saying printing cash in simple terms. And the money supply comes in printed money, and the value of your money is going to go down. It's going to take over a period of time. It doesn't happen straight away. They have printed and pumped in, I think in June last year, pumped in 720 billion into the system, whereas the money supply is about 2.3 trillion or something. So a lot of money, a lot of high percentage, that's going to reduce the value of your purchasing power. So that's going to happen. So, but that's safe, that base. The second thing you could look at is the medium return and medium risk item. Those would be, I would put the properties as well in here, the property business, and then the blue chip companies into that category. So they have a return maybe 5% per annum. Your properties might grow in good times 7 to 10% per annum, but that's that. So that would be the bulk of your savings. That's where it should be. On the top of the pyramid, the apex of the pyramid, is where you get high return, but also high risk. So that should not be more than 10%. So there are people who allocate more money into that, but they are willing to take that risk. the guy I talked about who made some money from electronic business, his percentage is almost the opposite. He is putting about 70% of his money into that high risk category. He's investing in mining industry where at the exploration stage. So there are companies he has invested in, he has grown by 20 to 30 times, right? But that's not going to happen every time. but he is willing to take the risk. So when I told him that he should also be thinking about investing in property, he says, look, I'm still 30. Even if I fail, I can start again. But if I succeed, I'm going to become a multimillionaire, many folds. So it's okay, it depends on the person. But we need to teach them what the issues are. And if they knowingly take these risks, it's up to them. Right? So those are the three categories. And I wish I had known this before. Yeah, but at least it's not too late to have known.
Thank you so much. I think it is depends on the personality, but also I think it depends on circumstances, isn't it? The responsibilities one have with the appetite of risk. When you mentioned property, I think one success story, I do know someone who didn't have money to buy properties, but they were renting out other people's properties. And, so I think because people who don't like to take or put the hard work in, I guess, with the properties, these people took the properties or let the properties. I don't know exactly how I'm sure you are the master, you will know how this works, but, they were renting out taking for a particular amount of money from the owner and then letting out and managing those properties and making money that way. So, that shows there are more than one way to make money, because we usually think if we don't have money to buy a property, we cannot make money from the property market.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct, right? What I'm saying? Because that's what I'm told.
I didn't catch the full essence of that.
Okay, so essence is like most of us think we cannot enter property market, particularly when you're young or don't have those resources. But there are ways and means that you can manage somebody else's property and still make money to start with, and then that way then you can enter the property.
Okay, so so they're not investing in property as such. In the initial stages, they are managing a business, understanding the business, and so on. Yes, once you get to know that, it's a way of getting to know the industry. And also when you're in that industry, you have the opportunity of getting the cheap properties and go and get it. Yes, that's part of your learning, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, like when we talk about savings, income and expenditure are two sides of the equation we have to manage. Yeah. So can you tell us some tips how to increase the income? I think you already mentioned a few, and also how to manage the expenditure, because I think that is something also people struggle with. Because how to manage the expenditure, I know that you started saying that first pay the mortgage, because that's a huge, but other than that, is there anything you could tell us?
Now, if you want to be successful, right, in making income, grow your income or whatever, it is not the IQ that matters. The person with high IQ is not necessarily the person who is going to make a lot of money. It's the person who works through the hard scenarios and person who is committed, who is going forward. That's the kind of person who is going to do that. So first, you want to become successful. You need to define what your success is, what qualifies as success to you, right? We looked at 4 different quadrants, but in each quadrant, even though some people say one side is poor, the other is rich, in each quadrant, you can be successful. People are happy. You take an employee, as long as he has his own house, drives a car, has holidays, and so on, he's successful, right? Then at the same time, somebody else might think, yes, but I didn't save 2 million pounds for my children, and he is a failure. Right? So you've got to define your success. then you got to be willing to work through this. And also, working through doesn't mean it's easy. And as you know, probably, I'm sure you know, this to become a master at something, they say you've got to put in something like 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to be dedicated to it, work through it. People can be successful. I think everyone knows Sachin Tendulkar, the cricketer, right? He would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and will start practicing. When he goes on tours, apparently when everyone is together, having a good time and so on, he would be on the ground practicing. That guy has put the effort. So it's the hard work that matters, but focused hard work. Yeah. So you've got to work smart and focus. And as we said before, I have already mentioned, to be successful in life, people skills are very, very important. Is the person with the people skill who is successful in corporations or wherever. And that's it. There's no other way. Then also, you mustn't be disheartened if you fail. A Pepsi Cola, for example, says, if you are, and all the project managers and senior managers, they don't fail in their task. They are not challenged. So a certain amount, they say a certain amount of failure should be inherent in the system. And if you're not willing to face that failure, then you're not going to be successful. You should face that failure and go ahead, go through that. The other one is, when you want to be a successful person, and if you go to somebody and you have a poor body language, poor attitude, it comes through. So you must have some confidence. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful. There should be inner confidence. I don't know how to achieve that. I can't advise how to get that to people, but they have to work on that. They should have that inner confidence to go and talk to all the successful business people. They have that self-belief. I can go, I can do it. So that's important. And lastly, one doesn't know everything. So one has to go and get the right advice at the right time. Get the best people possible. Best people may be a bit more expensive, but on the whole, they pay back. So that's that. That's the positive side. The negative side, that's the expenses side. You've got to make your own decisions. Even the corporations, they got to see what kind of expenses they are willing to face. So certain kind of expenses, they call it good expenses, and the others they call bad expenses. For example, in the company I work for, if you were to build up a brand, any money that goes into building up a brand was considered good expenses. But on the other side, if we spend a lot of money on entertainment, on travel, and so on, that was frowned upon, because what value does it add? Can it be done differently? Could we use all these virtual technology and so on? So examine all the expenses, see whether it's adding value, otherwise cut out. And on a personal basis, sometimes people go and buy big expensive houses. Do they actually need it? Even if they can't afford it, they need it because that seems to be the fashionable thing. Or changing, I don't want to go into the details and negative, but things, whatever you do, see whether that is essential to meet your end targets, end goals.
Yes, and we women, cars are for the toys and boys and toys, and for us it is the shoes and the bags. So, I totally understand. For people who want to look up the 10,000 hours rule, welcome Gladwell, Outliers book. You can go and buy it in Amazon if you want to go and read the book, and it's really a good book to read as well. Yes. So yeah. So thank you so much, because I think expenditure is a huge thing we don't understand initially. it was really for me, it opened my mind when I read that Rich Dad Poor Dad, because we all think if we have a comfortable house, reasonable house, we have made that investment and we are happy. And according to that book, it is not investment, because actually you are spending money because it's your luxury. You are living on it. I don't know how true it is, but I guess it does have to come in that luxury quadrant rather than investment. Do you agree with that, right?
It depends on what it is, right? So supposing you have bought a new house and you can afford it and the value goes up, it's a good investment. It's not a bad investment. As we said before, debt is good. Debt is not always bad. Okay? You can't just say debt is bad. So if you can get the interest mortgages at 2%, and if the house is growing at 7%, go and buy the biggest house possible if you can get that loan.
Okay, because in that book he does address this. Am I correct? Because he says that is not investment if you are living in that house. So I just wanted to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, what your strategy is. Right? If you can live in that house for 10 years, sell it, and have that investment, it's fine. And there is another benefit to it here in the UK, at least. I don't know about USA. If it is your first asset, the residence, you don't pay capital gains tax. So buy the biggest possible, if you can afford, sell it at a point in time if you want to, and there's no capital gains tax.
Sure. Thanks. Why do you think some people are really successful more than others? Because it's not always related to where they come from, or you already spoke about IQ, the circumstances. So what is that cutting edge thing they have, what other people seem to miss?
I think we have gone through that, right? Because the working through the difficult times, the commitment, the total commitment, and when I say total commitment, we talk the 10,000 hours. Who is prepared to do that? Right? And every time a business fails, you give up. Then you're not dedicated to that. So businesses fail. You know more about this guy who invented the light bulb, right?
Yeah.
1,000 times he tried and it didn't work. He kept on going. He said, okay, 1,000 times I tested the ways of not working. Let me go to the other one that would work. And so you have to be dedicated to that. And again, we talked about people skills. That's very important. Failure should not detract you from going ahead. Then confidence, you need to have that confidence and ask for help.
I think it is that 99 elements, isn't it? He tried, and the assistant says, let's give up, it's enough. And he says, it's great because we have majority of the elements we have already tried, and now only few more to go and we will succeed. And John Maxwell speaks about failing forward. So, it's about how in NLP we say it's not failure, it's feedback. So yes. I think everyone has their own way of saying for the same message, isn't it?
Right, yeah. I totally agree, yes. I think in your NLP programs, you would talk about this all the time, what makes that person different, yeah.
Sure.
And also, not everyone is born with all the ability. If you think I was special, I was born with certain ability, and if you go ahead, that's one thing. But if you think you can learn this and you can learn this by practice, you could achieve this result, then that person is going to be successful. It is the second person, not the person who was born with this innate ability, is the person who is willing to put in the work. That's the person who is going to be successful. I'm told in every aspect of life. This was written by somebody, a UK-based psychologist. I forget the name. As I said, I assimilate this, then I forget who wrote this, but none of this is my original.
So, we spoke about success, and you said success is different for different people. And I always say for some people, it's just having that stable family. For some people, traveling the world. Some people having $2 million or pounds in their bank account. Yeah. It's very different. So do you think the importance of goal setting, is that what I'm talking about, I guess? It's knowing and understanding what is success for them and then going after that.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about success, you need to know what you want out of life. What you want of life or in business is where you want to get to, is the goals that you set. So the guy wanting to leave £2 million for his children, that's his goal. So if he doesn't achieve that, he's a failure. At least his definition is a failure. But the other person who is happy to live and don't worry about what he leaves to the children, this chap is a success. So it's all in our mindset and so on. I know of one German colleague of mine. He's now a member of the board in the biggest Russian retail company. And he makes a lot of money. At the age of 17 or so, his children left. They've got that at home. And he didn't worry about making sure the children are happy or not, or left with money or not. And that's his attitude. Whereas some of us might think, oh, if we don't set our children in life properly, then we have failed. So your goal, your mindset.
We're almost coming to the end of my questioning before the audience starts asking questions to you.
Oh.
So is there any success habits or anything you can propagate for our audience which will help them to get that success, whatever it is defined by them?
I think we are going over the same thing, right? So in the four quadrants, for somebody going to that investment quarter is a success. So once you know what your goals are, and then if you stick to those habits we talked about, then you will get there. Yeah. So define your goals, work through the process to get there.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think it's like, it's important for us to know. I think I'm definitely going to take on board the 50-20-20-10. Isn't it 70-20-10 or however you put it? Yeah. The 10% for personal development. I think mine perhaps goes 20 to 30% into personal development at this moment. But yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Raj. It was a pleasure. And thank you so much for enlightening us with all the answers and being patient with us. So following tradition, before I move to give the vote of thanks, let me announce the next week's topic and the speaker. Given the circumstances, particularly in India, and of course in Sri Lanka too, it is in some parts of Sri Lanka for sure, COVID is hitting a bit more harder than other places. We will be speaking about effective management of COVID. Dr. Venkita S. Suresh is an MD from India. He is a group medical director of Kaveri Hospitals, Tamil Nadu and Bangalore, group of 7 tertiary care hospitals, 5 of which are referral hospitals for COVID. He's a clinical director of COVID Physicians Group as well. He's an internist, cardiologist, and global health physician. He's also a graduate and postgraduate of Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, Maharashtra. He was also a clinical and research fellow at National Heart and Lung Institute at the Imperial College School of Medicine, Royal Brompton Hospital, London. So I can't wait for him to come and speak about management of COVID. So let's hopefully get some tools and strategies how the COVID situation can actually be managed in India. Following that, over to you, Kirubai Kahoot, to give the vote of thanks.
Before the vote of thanks, can I say something?
Of course.
I think many of us may be too late to adopt these strategies and whatever. It'll be very important. It is good if we can teach our children, the next generation, about at least the 2 things. How to allocate the overall earning, that is the 70-20-10 rule, and the 4-quadrant cash flow, the employment, self-employment, business, and investment strategies. So where they would want to, and what I said was a few words in a short period of time. There is a good book available, you said, Kiyosaki, And so if we can get our children educated in these, that will be a good start.
Raj, can you also please mention your book? You have written a book a much long time.
That was for business owners. So that's about processes and so on. I don't think on a personal finance, they would find it interesting. If they were to talk about employing the right processes in the business, and when you come to develop your business, that would be useful.
Yeah, I will share it definitely in the WhatsApp group later. I'll take a picture and put it there.
Thank you.
Kirubai Kohut, over to you.
On behalf of Meet Menaca talk show, we like to thank the Facebook viewers, our participants on this platform. Last but not least, our esteemed speaker, Raj Rudran, who is, by name, Raj, a leader, and he did show his skills today, who has such an impact, influence, and he always inspires us. He is part of this Meet Menaca committee, and we are very grateful today you came and graced this platform, and we are indeed very, very happy, and you're such an awesome person, and we are glad to have your acquaintance. Thank you, Raj.
Oh, I'm humbled by these big words, Kirubai.
It's very heartfelt, Raj.
Thank you.
Yeah, once again, thank you so much, Raj, for coming and agreeing to speak. I know you're a busy man, so it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions before we come off live from Facebook, and then we will continue to get the questions in, please.
Can you tell about the trusts?
Madhiparam Sridharan, okay.
Setting up trusts, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on trust. I have to be clear. I use other people to do this, but there are mainly two kinds of. There are several, but two. One is discretionary trust, where the trustee has discretion to deal with the assets within the trust. But you also have an issue. There is every 10 years. You've got to pay 6% of the total value of the trust to the HMRC. You have to be careful. So it's easy to set up trust. In those days, you were able to set up trust outside the UK and so on, but it no longer is possible. And the other kind of trust is a bare trust, where the trustee has very minimal control on that. I have a section of people, if the company I own, we have specialists in this area, but those are the two categories. And you have to look at it very carefully before you set up these trusts.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Raj. There's a question to you, another question. Having learned the skills of, I guess it's about personal development, so do we have to invest more rather than spending more on the personal development? What are your thoughts?
The personal development is an ongoing investment. You know, it's like big companies. They're always wanting to grow. The minute you stop growing, right, you're falling behind. So it's an ongoing process. You have to. Otherwise, you're falling back, because what you learned 10 years ago is obsolete today. So things have changed. So you have to keep on top. That's,
Sure.
You have to take it for granted.
Yeah, I think in the personal development industries, there's a saying is, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
It's only two things happening. So there's another question for you. What are your thoughts on credit card spending?
What can I say?
I'm glad I don't have to answer that.
Yes. There are times people are forced into this situation using credit card, and you should try to pay the full amount on time. You don't want to incur any charges. But some people get into this unnecessary debt, paying 26% interest. That's atrocious. So you should talk to some advisors to see how you could get out of it, right? So there may be other options, but 26% interest is unforgivable.
Sure, thank you. But also there's not 28% interest, but there is also, like you said, if you are taking the debt in a reasonable interest to invest, I think it is a bit different from spending.
Right. But I don't know of any place where you could get a loan at 26% and get a higher interest return elsewhere.
Sure.
Yeah. But
I mean, not 28%. That's what I said. No,
yes.
I'm not advocating that at all.
No. Yeah. But then, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, unfortunately, people are put in that situation. They need to try and get out of it as soon as they can, possibly can.
And also, do you think it's important to teach our children to how to build their credit rating from a young age? And what will affect adversely as well?
Yes, right from the beginning. Not about just credit rating, how to manage this. That's why I said it's important to teach our children at least the two things from here: how to save money over a period of time, spend money on them, and also the four cash flow quadrants. As to they may decide to be an employee forever, but that's up to them. There are doctors earning 250,000 or whatever, and so on. They're happy and settled, and they have plenty. But that's okay. But if you are focused on making multi-million, you want to be an investor, again, it's your decision, and that's your target, that's your goal, then you make the decision. At least you should be made aware of this.
Sure, thank you. I think Dr. Navratnam has a question. That's going to be the last question before we come off on the live, and then of course everyone else can ask for the question as well.
Right, thank you, Menaca. I enjoyed joining this group.
Thank you.
And I have come to know Rudran Raj only recently because of Scott involvement. But I wish I had known him 20 years ago when I would have been a keen investor. But as doctors, as a consultant, we are fortunate that our income, once established, always exceeds expenses. So we did not have to carefully put away 10% or 20%. And in fact, I had a finance advisor who helped me, particularly when we retire, we get lump sum. And when there are other reasons for getting bigger sums of money. And then the finance advisor often helps us. And as the Jaffna man is, we are generally very cautious. We tend to not take high risk. We tend to take moderate or low risk. And that is why we invest in property. And investing in property has been a characteristic of Tamil people. I know Tamil people who own 20 houses in London, and I did not go in that way, but we did invest our extra savings in property. There are now people who advertise or who try to fish using the internet, gullible people like me, to investing in bonds, claiming that they'll pay 3% and 4%, and one of them is at 9%. And how do we know? I'm asking Raj Rudran, how do you get to know these people playing the fool? Because Raj himself said there are ways of making 20%. So we wonder whether we are only getting a portion of the 20%. Raj, I would like him to answer this.
Thank you so much. I think just before Raj starts answering that, it's dangerous to say anyone who is more careful than anyone else. I think generally different people have different personalities and different priorities, I guess. Over to you, Raj.
If something is too good to be true, it is not true. Right? So when a bank is paying us something like 0.25% or 0.5%, if somebody comes to me and says that he is willing to give me 9% interest with the same level of security, then you begin to wonder what's going on. So you look at the background. That's one thing. But also at the same time, I talked about the 20% interest. So I know of this company, and I have talked to them and look at the way they process and so on. And they have been successful. Their past record shows success. And their processes, I don't want to advertise this company, but then just to talk about this, they have 50 odd or more than that even number of analysts who are focused on this. First, they identify the sectors that are going to be successful right now. So, for example, the high-tech sectors in certain areas, they have identified. They have also identified agriculture in certain areas and mining sectors. They, having identified that, they invest globally so that they spread the risk. It's not in one country or whatever. And their record shows 20% improvement. But they also take high net worth individuals in the sense they won't go for smaller investments. They would go for 250 to 500,000 pounds as minimum. But so those opportunities are available, but they go hand in hand with the risk level. When you go and invest in this, there's a risk attached to it. So if you're happy to take, but these people have been clever managing on an ongoing basis, but when you look for that much 20% return, you must also understand the risk is high. Whereas if you put the money in the bank and get 0.5% return, you have no risk. It's coming back to you. Other than the bank failing itself, that's another risk.
So for people who are watching us on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, same place, same time, we will be speaking about effective management of COVID with Dr. Venkita S. Suresh. Until then, stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.